Godzilla 98 is considered to be the black sheep of the Godzilla series, especially here on YouTube for some reason. Everyone hates it. Now, it's been a while since I've seen the American Godzilla. 25 years, in fact, because I saw it in theaters when I was 11. Now, every 11-year-old comes out of the theater amazed at the movie they just watched, but now at 35, I've grown much more cynical. So let's rewatch Godzilla 98 with an open mind and see if it deserves the hate it receives. During the opening credits, we see nuclear tests on some remote island. The typical stuff you would expect to explain the creation of Godzilla. Sometime later, we see a boat out in the South Pacific Ocean that's about to have an encounter with something big. It crashes into the ship, and we don't see much detail, but we get our first look at a giant, scaly monster that I'm willing to bet's Godzilla. Now we meet Dr. Nico Tatopoulos. Oh, sorry. That's actually a running gag in this movie. Everyone pronounces his last name wrong, so I'll just call him Nick. Nick's played by Matthew Broderick. He does an okay job, but he's just a little too nice. Like, someone could literally spit in his face and he would just be like, "Oh, hello." Nick is studying earthworms around Chernobyl. It turns out that because of the nuclear disaster, the worms have grown 17%. He's trying to figure out why. But there just might be bigger fish to fry than earthworms.
Groovy!
Nick meets with Colonel Hicks, who gives him a new sample to study. And it's a big one.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
It seems like at this point, even the military doesn't know what they're dealing with yet. They have footage of a sunken ship and even talk to a survivor, but all they get's a name for the creature. Next, we meet up with Audrey Timmons, who works for a news agency in New York City, with her best friend Lucy and Victor Pilati. More on them in a bit, but for now, just know that they exist, and that Audrey dated Nick in college, so there is some history there. Back to Nick and the military, who are taking a look around at the ship Godzilla attacked, and they come up with some theories. Maybe it's a lost dinosaur, but how did it stay hidden? Nick thinks that maybe, just like his earthworms, they're dealing with a mutation, a new species, the first of its kind. While they're discussing all that, Hicks meets with Philippe Roche, who claims to be an insurance agent that works for the company that owns the ship, but he seems a little sus. The military track down the monster's movements based on its attacks, and it looks like it's headed right toward Manhattan, and they're too late to warn anyone. Godzilla bursts from the water, not really attacking anything in particular, just walking around and wreaking havoc. He does try to eat a truck, but maybe he thought it was a banana or something. To Godzilla, we're just ants, and insignificant to him. This is our first good look at the creature, and it's okay, especially for 1998. Even back then, I knew it wasn't going to be a guy in a suit, but CGI, which kinda sucks, but in 1998 at 11, I didn't really care. So anyway, remember Audrey and her friends? Well, they're hanging out and they see all the commotion. Victor's a cameraman for the studio, so he jumps at the idea of getting a shot of this thing. And, well, he does. He probably made his pants brown, too. The military comes in, albeit a little late, and sets up a command center. The mayor, Mayor Ebert, which is obviously a play on the then famous Siskel and Ebert film critics, which is just a weird thing to do in a movie, but okay. The mayor evacuates the town. That's right, all 2 million people are forced to leave their homes so they can come up with a plan to get rid of this thing. On the news, they report that a dinosaur's loose in the city, with Victor getting all the credit for his shot. Audrey ends up seeing her ex on TV, and she thinks that this might be the perfect opportunity for her to get ahead at the station. While the city's clearing out, we see Roche setting up in a surveillance truck. So, yeah, he's more than just an insurance agent. They listen in on the mayor and learn that the military thinks that it's hiding out in a building, so each one has to be checked. The first place they go is the subway, and yeah, it looks like he's using that to get around, unnoticed. Nick suggests to stop treating this thing as the enemy, but as an animal. The best way to catch worms is to draw them out. So they need to find out what he wants, and it looks like that's fish. So they commandeer a ton of it and wait, hoping that its scent will attract the monster. And sure enough, it does. Godzilla actually sees Nick, and it looks for a moment like he's gonna gain the giant creature's trust. It goes in for the snack, and then the military get the command to open fire on the beast, which only scares it off, causing more damage. At this point, I'm not sure who's worse, Godzilla or the military who just took out the Chrysler building. Back in Jersey, everyone's itching for news, but the military isn't talking. So Audrey takes advantage of her past relationship with Nick to try to get the inside story. And it's a big scoop. He figured out, using tissue samples from the creature, Godzilla's pregnant. That's right, he's capable of giving birth, and all of it makes sense. Godzilla made Manhattan its nest, being able to reproduce asexually.
Where's the fun in that?
Audrey takes this info and a top secret tape of the ship attack and uses it for a news story. When Nick goes to tell the military the news about Godzilla laying eggs, well, they've seen the footage, and that's not good news for Nick, who's fired on the spot. He gets his things and loads up in a taxi, when he's stopped by Audrey, who tries to apologize. Here's his chance to really tell her off, cut her deep with his words, and make her regret ever selling his story. But nope, Mr. Nice Guy Nick just says, "See you later." As he's heading to the airport, Nick's stopped by Roche, and here is where we find out that he's not an insurance agent, but an agent of the French Secret Service. But why are the French getting involved now? It turns out that those nuclear tests that were happening in the opening credits, well, that was actually the French who were setting off the bombs. So technically, it's their fault, and Roche is here to clean all that up, as quietly as possible. He believes Nick that Godzilla's laying eggs, and offers his assistance and firepower to take them all out.
Always wanted to join the French Foreign Legion.
Back to Audrey for a minute, who's crying her head off for what she just did to Nick. Victor's there to help console her, but in the end, all that matters is clearing Nick's name. The military and press made him out to be nuts with his egg theory. If they could somehow prove that it's true, it might clear Nick's name, and maybe she would be on his good side again. So it's back to the city they go. Meanwhile, the military are working on their own plan. Remember, they're still only worried about the one big Godzilla. Using the fish method, they lure it out into Central Park and open fire as soon as they can. Choppers fly in and do a ton of damage to both Godzilla and the city, but then Godzilla just jumps back into the water. Is he running from the military? There's something you'll never see in any other Godzilla movie ever. Anyway, they're prepared for this, and they fire torpedoes at him via subs. They manage to hit the monster dead on, and it sinks into the depths. Meanwhile, the French continue their search for the nests, which seem to be in Madison Square Garden. Inside, they find the eggs, which there's way more than they were thinking. They set up bombs and prepare to blow them all up. But they better work fast because it looks like these eggs are starting to hatch. Instead of, running for their lives, Victor decides he better get a shot of them being born, but then realizes the error of his ways and books it out of there. Both groups run around for a while fighting the baby Zillas, which are really more like velociraptors. They all shoot, hide, some guys are taken out, but nobody really important. Roche gives Nick a phone to call in for backup, but wouldn't you know, it's busy. It turns out the military only has one line. So they all escape into the broadcast booth. And from here, they manage to go live, showing the babies to the world and proving Nick was right about Godzilla laying eggs. As soon as they're all hungry enough, they'll escape the arena and feed. In a month, they could replace humans as the dominant species. So they better hop to it. Send some backup. Blow this place up. Colonel Hicks sees this broadcast and he agrees to bomb Madison Square Garden. So our heroes have less than 6 minutes to escape. As they run, they have some shameless plugs from advertisers that could help pay for this movie when it flops. One of which is Josta Cola. Remember that stuff? It had a really weird taste. It wasn't bad, it was just unique. I kind of miss it. If they ever remake Godzilla 98, heaven forbid, Pepsi really should re-release Josta Cola as a tie-in. Anyway, back to our movie. Our heroes escape just as the arena's bombed, destroying all the babies. But wait, did you think the big guy was dead? Nope. Godzilla bursts through, and he's ticked off. He chases after our heroes in a cab, and after some fancy driving, they end up leading him to Brooklyn Bridge. After a close call where the cab is actually scooped up and almost eaten, they lead Godzilla onto the bridge, and he gets caught in the cables. An easy target, and they blast him with everything they got, finally killing the animal. One pretty cool thing I have to point out, because I remember it clearly from seeing it in the movie theaters, there's no music as Godzilla dies. All you hear is his heartbeat, until that too finally stops. Everyone celebrates, Nick and Audrey get together, Roche quietly sneaks back to France, and that's that. But you just know they gotta leave it open for a sequel, and we see one final egg hatch. And that was 1998's Godzilla. What'd you think? Is it a bad movie? Well, sort of. Does it deserve the hate? Well, sort of. I guess so. I mean, it's okay. There's a lot going on at almost 2.5 hours. I feel like that's just a little too long. I can understand why die-hard Godzilla fans didn't like it. Treating the monster as an overgrown animal is pretty dumb. Godzilla's best treated as a natural disaster, like the atomic bomb that inspired it. When Toho Studios sold the rights to TriStar, they gave them some rules that they had to follow. Things like Godzilla's origin had to be tied to a nuclear accident, he can't be made fun of, and he can't eat people. All the way to the specific things like he must have 3 rows of dorsal plates, 3 toes, and 4 fingers. Another key rule they wrote in is that he cannot die in the movie. Well, they missed the boat on that one. Not only did he die, but the military killed him. That's something unspeakable to the Japanese Godzilla. The whole point is that Godzilla is an indestructible force that man can't beat. It always takes another monster or the oxygen destroyer to take him out. Godzilla 98 was the first Godzilla movie I ever saw, so since then I've become quite a fan. I even managed to watch the original 1955 Japanese version in theaters, which is quite the experience. Looking back on Godzilla 98 after a rewatch, I feel like they didn't respect what Godzilla was, and they just wanted to make a movie to entertain a new American audience. Since then, there's been several other Godzilla movies released, and even some made by American companies, and they've all been much better. So if you're a fan, skip this one. It's insulting. If you just want to see Matthew Broderick hunt down a giant monster in the rain, then yeah, give it a watch. I give it 1 Josta Soda out of 4.
What's with the chewing gum?
Makes us look more American.
Just let me do all the talking, all right?